Welcome back, Defenders. The strikes against oil refineries continue. Russia's oil refineries burn after Ukrainian strikes. Kyiv warns of more to come. Kyiv struck Russia's Afivsky and Kubiashev oil refineries and depots on August 28th, sparking massive fires, while Russia shelled Ukrainian cities. This is where these two oil refineries are located on the map. The Afivsky has been struck earlier this month, and the new one, this is in Samara. This is Kubiashev, and it's about 1,000 kilometers from the border. And we have the videos. The first one, Afivsky, the fire was put out last time, and once the fire is out, you can just strike it again if there's more valuable targets that will burn. The other refinery, there was some confusion. Apparently, there are two oil refineries in the city of Samara. Initially, it was reported this was the Novokubiashevsk, but it turns out it's the other one, the Koibishevsk oil refinery. We have the video of the refinery on fire. I'll link them down below. But there's nothing Russia can do to make these stop. They don't have the air defense systems, and they don't have the capability to protect these oil refineries. Ukraine has proven that this month. And then there's the pipelines. Major pipeline explosion halts Moscow fuel supplies after Ryazan blast. The main Ryazan-Moscow oil pipeline exploded on the 26th of August, disrupting fuel supplies to the Russian capital and prompting Transneft to assess the damage. There is a video of the explosion of the pipeline. It's pretty massive. I'll link it down below if you want to see it. And this is where the pipeline is located on the map. You can see it goes between the refineries in Moscow and Ryazan, and it's no longer operational. Ukraine knocked it offline. Reportedly, the oil flow has been suspended to both of these refineries because the pipeline is down. This is a catastrophe, and Russians know it. More Russians are beginning to speak up. This is the Russian propagandist Maxim Kalishnikov, and he is raising the alarm about the danger to the Russian economy. This is what he's saying. The fuel crisis is spreading across the country. Now there's shortage of fuel in Primorsky Krai, and just recently the same happened in Khabarovsky Krai, as well as in Crimea. In Primorsky Krai, there's a similar influx of tourists as in Crimea, and these difficulties with gasoline have occurred there. Most likely, of course, this is a consequence of the strikes on our oil refining infrastructure, the drone attacks by Ukraine's armed forces in August. It has now been calculated that, in one way or another, roughly 13% of our oil processing capacity has been taken out of service. Not completely destroyed, but rendered inoperative. That's a very significant amount. This is essentially the beginning of the crisis, forcing the authorities to redirect fuel, making adjustments, and respond to interruptions, which, as you can imagine, has a negative impact on our economy. I've seen this Maxim Kalishnikov guy before, but he is very concerned. He said 13%, but the most updated figures from Reuters is 17%. That doesn't include the two refineries last night. We could be at 20%. That's a big deal. But Kalishnikov continued on Roy TV, and these are quotes, what he was telling people. Russia's economy is at its limits with the ongoing war. Of course, Dugin and Medensky can babble about being ready to fight for another 10 or 20 years. But that's pure nonsense. We don't have that much time. I also hear the delusional statements that soon we will start a war with Europe, that will begin a nuclear arms race and spend 90 trillion rubles on arsenal modernization. There is no chance of that. Our economy has not yet collapsed completely, but it is already breaking apart. The failed blitzkrieg resulted in the Russian Federation being stripped of 1.2 trillion, the equivalent of 100 trillion rubles, needed for development. And the war continues to devour our resources. Tens of trillions will still be required just to repair the destruction in the new occupied territories. Very soon we will face the difficult question of how to finance the security services and state apparatus, at least to pre-war levels, or how to avoid delays in pension payments. The Russian Federation faces a stormy political upheaval. Economically, the situation is the same as in the USSR in 1985, on the eve of perestroika, while politically it resembles the February 1917 revolution in which the Tsarist regime collapsed. That's the opinion of a Russian propagandist, speaking truthfully, before Putin has him arrested and thrown in jail. Ukraine also is striking valid military targets. It's just not getting reported. Russians are not allowed to take pictures or videos of damaged sites, but Ukraine struck the Shahid factory in Tatarstan again. They basically bomb this once a week. This is where Russia is producing their own Shahid drones that they launch against Ukraine. So that's Ukraine's game strategy. Win the war. Find a way to make Russia collapse. And for the Russians, they're sticking with their strategy of the last 3.5 years of just pure terrorism, genocide, no military objective. Russian ballistic missiles hit Kyiv in massive attack, at least 3 dead and 18 injured, but that number is going up. This was the second largest ever single night attack from the Russians. The previous one was a couple weeks ago, 700 drones and missiles. This time it was 629, focusing on the capital city of Kyiv. And here's Russia's progress. This is not a stray missile or a stray drone being shot down, falling in a residential area. This was the target. Russia is deliberately targeting apartment blocks for the purpose of terrorism. And in this single building, 15 killed, including 4 children. This is devastating. One of the killed was a 17-year-old girl, Mirna Hirschko, and a family friend wrote that her parents bought a wedding dress to bury her in, since her daughter will never get to marry because of the Russians. It's terrorism. It's a genocide. We have to find a way to make this stop. There are journalists on the ground in front of the destroyed building. This is what this journalist is reporting. I'm next to an apartment building that got damaged by the enemy's shelling. There can be no conversations about a peace deal. A whole part of the building has collapsed. There are people under the rubble. Telegraph is everywhere. I'll link the video down below if you want to see more, but yes, there are people, or there were people still alive. And they're tapping. They're tapping to let search and rescuers know they're still under the rubble, still alive. But if you want to see pictures and videos of dead children being pulled from the rubble, it's on social media. It's on the internet. Russia could not be prouder that they target and kill children, women, people sleeping in their beds. I do want to share this video. This is Jessie the dog, and this dog just lost her owner. And this is what the dog looks like, knowing now that her owner is dead.
А її хазяїн це той,
Горів стоянку. Хазяїн немає.
він загинув?
Загинув. На стоянці. Він дежурив у нас на стоянці, і вона з ним тут завжди дежурила на цьому стояночку.
I don't know what to say, guys. This is every day. Kyiv got it the worst, but Russia did attack other areas, including Sumy. The Russians deliberately bombed a geriatric nursing home, and all the residents had to be evacuated. This is every day. Hospitals, schools, churches, nursing homes. This is what the Russian military chooses to target, thinking that this will somehow lead to victory. I also want to share this video of a woman who lost her apartment in Kyiv. She was sleeping in the hallway at the time of the attack, and that probably saved her life. But here is her report from her destroyed home.
Привіт, в мій дом сьогодні влетів шахет. І знаєте, в нас є камера, ми це зафіксували. Я хочу показати вам це відео. І може для когось це стане приводом ходити в ванну, в коридор хоча б, а краще в укриття. Не дивлячись на ось оце все. Шампанське, блядь, уціліло!
All of her windows were blown out, her apartment was destroyed, but the champagne survived. These are not accidents. These were the deliberate targets. We have the CCTV video showing where the ballistic missiles were targeting, and Russia deliberately targeted the downtown of Kyiv. And specifically, they wanted to target the British Council building. This is friend of the channel, Kaylin Robertson, and he's on the ground in Kyiv, showing the destruction of their downtown.
So this building behind me is the British Council, and they basically support peace and prosperity between Ukraine and the United Kingdom. And it's been destroyed by a Russian missile this morning. And this building regularly, on a daily basis, contains British government staff, British employees, and the Russians know that. And the Russians decided to put a missile into this street at the early hours of this morning. And moments like this should wake people up in the United Kingdom that Russia isn't just at war with Ukrainians, they're at war with everybody in the West. They were perfectly happy to hit this building, and they'll be perfectly happy to hit buildings like it continuously. And if you look around at this street, there are no military targets. This is a residential street filled with people sleeping, children sleeping, and again, the British government building.
This is Russia's new deliberate strategy, blowing up that American factory in the west of Ukraine, now targeting and blowing up the British Council building. Putin is sending the message to everyone in the West, get out of Ukraine, all of Ukraine, because all of Ukraine rightfully belongs to me, and I will never stop until I have taken this entire country. So is any progress being made to stopping the Russians? And no, not under Donald Trump or Steve Witkoff. This is Trump's special envoy. Russia submits Donetsk peace plan that Ukraine may not accept. What is Russia's peace plan? And they've not really budged at all. They want Ukraine to surrender all of Donetsk. And this is a setup. Witkoff and the Russians are working together, and they're trying to blame Ukraine. So this peace proposal is going to be talked about between Yermak, Umarov, and Witkoff this week in Washington, D.C. And of course, the Ukrainians are not going to surrender close to 1 million people in 9 fairly large cities, plus all of their defensive fortifications. But this is what the Russians are demanding to start the peace process, to start talking about a ceasefire. They just want Ukraine to give up all their defensive fortifications that they've spent more than a decade building, and then Russia will get serious about starting the process of talking about stopping this war. This is nonsense. It's just a waste of time. Kremlin doubles down on opposition to European troops in Ukraine. This is Russia's red line. They're never going to budge on this. They will never be okay with peacekeeping forces in Ukraine if there is a ceasefire, if there is a freeze in the conflict. Additionally, they're never going to budge on they don't want Ukraine receiving any additional weapons supplies. If any country in Europe continues to provide military aid to Ukraine, then Russia's never going to stop the war. So that means Russia's never going to stop the war. So what is the purpose of all this with Donald Trump if he has no intention of ever placing sanctions or tariffs or any kind of political pressure on his best friend Vladimir Putin? What was the purpose of the Alaska summit if Putin doesn't want a ceasefire, he doesn't want to stop the war, he doesn't want a one-on-one with Zelensky, he's not willing to budge on territorial claims? What did they talk about for like 3 hours? And now we know, White House really wanted to put out a headline. Russia and the United States quietly talk energy deals during Ukrainian peace push. The discussions centered on ExxonMobil's potential return to the Sakhalin-1 oil and gas project in Russia's Far East and the sale of American equipment for Russian liquefied natural gas ventures. It's about money, it's about business, it's about two energy giants, and yes, the United States and Russia and Saudi Arabia are the top 3 energy providers to the world. And Trump wants to work with Putin. He's trying to help ExxonMobil reclaim corporate shares that Putin froze when the West placed sanctions on Russia. So Donald Trump is soulless. He doesn't care that teenagers are being bombed, that elderly people are being bombed, that people are dying. He says it occasionally, but he doesn't actually mean it. If he meant it, over the last 8 months he would have done something to try and get this war to be stopped. But it's just about money. It's just about power and control. And that's what they talked about. Business deals. It's so cartoonishly evil, guys. They're talking about diamonds. U.S. extends authorization to import diamonds from Russia. Nearly 3 years after the G7 restricted Russian diamond trade, the Office of Foreign Assets Control extended U.S. import permissions for Russian diamonds. People are dying, and this is the top policy agenda for my government? To make sure that Russian diamonds continue flowing into the United States for sale? For profit? America is soulless, guys. I'm sorry. I am just so deeply sorry. This is incredibly shameful. Trump's never going to help. He's never going to do anything to help stop this war. Trump wants to play both sides in the event Russia collapses so that he can then claim credit that he's the one that helped collapse Russia, when really the Europeans and Ukraine did everything. This is how cartoonishly stupid my government is. Putin and his cabinet don't even talk like this. But Trump held a cabinet meeting, and for like more than an hour, it's just one by one, everyone kissing his ass, saying he's the most transformational leader of all time, and the United States has never been stronger due to his brave leadership. And when we went around the table and got to Steve Witkoff, this is what Steve Witkoff said to kiss this man's ass.
And there's only one thing I wish for, that Nobel Committee finally gets its act together and realizes that you are the single finest candidate since the Nobel Peace, this Nobel Award was ever talked about, to receive that reward. Beyond your success is game-changing out in the world today. And I hope everybody one day wakes up and realizes that.
Trump is now publicly claiming that he has stopped or ended 10 different wars around the world in the last 6 months. But he's not stopped the war between Israel and Palestine or Russia and Ukraine, which were the two wars he promised he would stop on day one as being president. It's so dumb, guys. This is Kim Jong-un, North Korea level of dictatorship nonsense. And this is what I have to listen to and hear every day. And half my country, or about 40%, pretends like this is normal. Here's John Bolton. Donald Trump's Ukraine policy today is no more coherent than it was last Friday when his administration executed search warrants against my home and office. Collapsing in confusion and haste, Trump's negotiations may be in their last throes, along with his Nobel Peace Prize campaign. The point where we're at is that nobody is listening to Trump or taking him serious. All he does is lie. All he does is 2 more weeks, and the media isn't even caring. I don't think people in Europe care. European leaders. There's no point in talking to this man when he either lies or speaks nonsense about everything. Because he loves Putin and the Russians, and he wants to make money with them. But we're still going to defeat Russia without the help of the United States. I am still confident. I am more confident today than I have been this entire year, based on all the indications we're getting, guys. And Russia has serious problems. Donbass water woes worsen, supply cuts to 6 more cities. Irate taxpayers have accused the local Russian-appointed government of doing little to repair damaged water mains in order to sell more bottled water manufactured by insider companies. So the water crisis in the occupied territories is getting worse and worse, And yes, this is horrible for the people. These are Ukrainian citizens living under occupation, and they just have to leave. They either have to find a way to exit Russia and get back to Ukraine, or they have to just go live in Russia, accept a Russian passport, and wait for the war to end, and then they can return home. But if the occupied territories don't have clean drinking water, they don't have running water in their pipes, then no Russian soldier stationed in the occupied territories, and there's probably close to 800,000 of them, none of them have clean drinking water. None of them have clean water to bathe or wash their clothes. Like, this is a nightmare for the Russian military, considering all of the occupied territories, their water is breaking down. This is one of the founders of the DPR, Andrei Pergin, and this is what he is saying about the poor quality of water damaging boiler rooms. We have a large number of new boilers that were supplied not so long ago, 2 or 3 years ago. Many of them have become unusable because at the time they were filled with the heat transfer fluid, the water that was not properly treated. The most affected are not just the pipes, which have to be replaced endlessly at great cost, but also the boiler equipment itself, which cannot tolerate very hard water. Basically, a borehole was drilled, and it was assumed that the water from the borehole was clean and could be used to fill the boilers. Unfortunately, this led to boilers in many boiler rooms failing. They were replaced last year, and now they are being replaced again. In other words, new boilers that are failing very quickly. The quality of water in the occupied territories is so bad that their water boilers are failing. They're becoming clogged with contaminants, and they can't properly function. Meaning, when we get to this winter, the people in the occupied territories won't have heat. All of Russia's soldiers stationed in the occupied territories this winter will not have heat. That sounds pretty bad for a fighting military. I don't know, guys. We'll figure this out together when it happens. On top of that, Russian investigative outlet The Insider spoke with numerous volunteers supplying troops with equipment and donations, and discovered an eye-opening situation. In recent months, the volunteer movement has plunged into crisis, with rising signs of fatigue and frustration. A significant share of supplies for the Russian army, from uniforms to thermal imagers and drones, has come from volunteers since the start of the full-scale invasion. One of them, Natalia from Bryansk, says that people used to donate an average of 500 to 1,000 rubles. Now she must seek funding from businesses and the government, but gets no response. Another volunteer from Belgorod, Ruslan, said he quit the movement, noting that more and more people have no motivation to support the army. He also adds, "I judge even by my own circle. In February 2022, everyone told their loved ones, it will be over in a week. Now parents tell those same children, if you see our soldiers, cross to the other side of the street." Public perception of this war, even amongst the Z Patriot community, has collapsed. It's been 3.5 years. Russia's military is not making progress. When these soldiers come home, oftentimes missing limbs, they have PTSD. They're violent. They're stabbing and killing people in public. Society in Russia is breaking down, and the volunteer movement to support their soldiers has completely collapsed this year. More bad news. Employees of Russia's space agency are reported to have gone without pay for 3 months, causing severe hardship. So this is Russia's space agency, and employees are saying they've not been paid since May 15th because Russia doesn't have money. YouTube video platform plans layoffs ahead of Gazprom Media merger. YouTube is supposed to be Russia's answer to YouTube, and it's going bankrupt. It doesn't make money and they can't pay their employees. So Gazprom, the energy giant, is going to buy it, but it's probably going to get shut off at some point. Sorry, not sorry. Here's an interesting headline we should talk about. Ukraine allows men aged 18 to 22 to travel abroad amid conflict over army recruitment versus demographic crisis. Military commanders argue the country cannot afford to let healthy young men leave when frontline units desperately need fresh recruits, while civilians contend that travel restrictions have accelerated family emigration and severed homeland ties for an entire generation of Ukrainian youth abroad. So let's think about this. Conscription in the Ukrainian military happens at age 25 and older, but they're going to ease travel restrictions for 18 to 22-year-olds. And the reason why, the old ban trapped men under 60 inside Ukraine, splitting families and fueling illegal escapes. Many parents sent boys abroad before age 18 to avoid conscription. Schools reportedly graduated classes entirely made up of girls. Because the restriction was at age 18, Ukrainian parents were sending their sons abroad at age 17, for fear that the law will be changed. If conscription is lowered from 25 to 18 abruptly, and their child hasn't left, then they'll be trapped. So Ukrainian parents were sending their 17-year-old sons abroad before the age 18 cap, for fear the law would change. So by raising this to 22, high schoolers don't have to flee the country, basically. It also allows Ukrainian men between the ages of 18 and 22 who fled abroad to come back because they know they can leave if they need to. So this is an internal issue. I'm not going to think too hard about it, but do I support conscription of Ukrainian men under the age of 25? And yes, I do. This is a war for Ukraine's survival, and every man should be helping. But that doesn't mean frontline soldier. You can be a maintainer. You can work for the railroads. You can be a firefighter or a cop or something to help out. But if all the men at age 17 just leave the country, then they're not even there to help in any way between the ages of 18 and 22. So in a way, this takes the pressure off, and hopefully the war ends before the conscription age has to be lowered again. And this is what this war is about. This is heartbreaking, guys, but this is what everyone in Ukraine is fighting for. Let me share this video from Ilya Ponomarenko, once again visiting the memorials in the capital city of Kyiv. That's all for this update video. Glory to Ukraine, glory to the heroes. If you found this video informative, give me a thumbs up. Best way to support the channel. Comments and questions, let me know down below. I love hearing from you guys. Till the next video, keep defending the truth, keep defending democracy.